Well, looky here, y'all. What if you could go back in time to avoid doing something that could keep you from getting what you want? I don't know about you, but I'd be on that like a buzzard on a gut wagon, like ugly on an ape. Y'all, I'd be on that like Joe on a bologna sandwich. Well, y'all, we might not be able to take you back in time, but we dang sure absolutely can take you back to our actual mistakes and misconceptions that me and the boys saw or experienced this elk season for sure. Our pain, your gain. We're going to give you the bacon without the sizzle. Welcome to part 3 of our elk hunting mentality, mistakes, and mentor series. The goal of this series is to take our actual boots on the ground 2023 season experience and help you learn, prepare, and get on that success train for 2024. So pull up a chair, reach your hands out to the campfire, and let's get this rock a-rolling. That discussion, our Elk Bros shout-outs, and questions from our awesome Elk Bros mailbox. So my friends, pull up a chair, adjust your volumes just right, and welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunting.
Welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunting, brought to you by ElkBros.com, with your host Gilbert Ornelas and elk hunting coach Joe Gilly. You want to hunt elk? They live to hunt elk. Their goal is to share with you what they have learned grinding it out for over 35 seasons, doing what they love. So come on into camp and set a spell. Welcome to Blue Collar Elk Hunters.
Hello there, everyone. If it's your first time with us, glad to have you. Hope you enjoy the show. And as always, for those blue collar hunters following our show and grinding it out with us every week, welcome back to Elk Camp. I'm Gilbert Ornelas coming to you from Spring, Texas. I'm the host of your show, and joining me tonight's crew, we got them lined up, guys. That's right. We got the Northern Don of the Venezuelan Mafia, Mr. Manano Grateron's in the house. That's right. We got one of the baddest elk hunting coaches on our staff. No doubt. He is the man with the golden voice. He is a licensed guide in New Mexico. He's also the owner of the Western Contours podcast and Western Fly Covers. None other than Mr. Guy Duplanche is in the house tonight.
What's up, boys?
We got Cody the Kid. That's right, one of our baddest elk hunting coaches out of the DFW area. Cody the Kid Kirkpatrick's with us. We got the Ninja tonight. Coming back for round 1 since he missed last week, Mr. Ninja, Mr. Leroy Chavez. And we've got, that's right, we got WWJGDs in the house. Joe Gilly has got it teed up and ready to hit it deep. What's up, fellas?
Did we get Manano Grateron?
I got him.
First
And
one,
the
Northern Don.
He said the Northern leader.
Oh, that's what it was, huh?
Yeah, that's right.
You know, I got confused when he said leader. I was like, what are you talking
Hey, man,
about
you
there
snooze,
now,
you
man?
lose, dude.
Huh?
You know, Luis is out, so
Dallas, Fort Worth, DFW. See, that's one thing about Gil, man. He's always throwing these acronyms at me, and I'm like, what the heck are you talking about, dude?
he's ready to shut me down and restart everybody. I'm telling you right now. He's like, whoa.
Yeah.
What we say about Manano and what's DFW?
Yeah, don't be talking bad about Manano, bro.
No, I don't know, you click something on my Zoom features that I got emojis, reaction stuff here. I'm trying
Give us
to
a double
figure it
thumbs
out.
up. Give us a double thumbs up, Manano. Look at this. Watch it.
Oh, no. What the heck, Joe?
Yeah, for everybody that is not viewing and that's just listening, we're using Zoom, and if you're using a Mac computer and it has the new Sonoma
Pretty sure he was
OS on it, it does some crazy things with Zoom. So if you give hand gestures, there's like balloons will show up or different things.
He waves at us and balloons come up, man.
Yeah.
Bubbles.
Yeah, it does not recognize the California howdy though, so it is appropriate.
And it sure doesn't recognize the number 1 in your life, Joe. It sure don't.
Yeah, they already tested that out, man.
Yeah.
I was going to turn mine on if that was going.
And and Chav decided to join us
To grace us with the Ninja's presence.
Yeah, I'm like, This is special.
He must have had him a way better.
Chav, I got your
date
back,
than
man.
us,
You
Joe.
missed one episode, and you're gonna catch it for.
I know.
We'll be talking about that
He
next
must have
season.
had a
in
way
camp.
better looking date than us, bro.
Wait a second.
That ain't hard to do with this group, buddy.
Amen, brother.
Dude, wasn't it DePlante that said, doesn't he live 200 yards down from?
Well, yeah, because you were saying Chad wasn't there. I was like, well, shit, he can walk down.
Man, I don't know if I can do that.
If we can't take
there he
Chad
goes
to the
again.
park,
I wasn't
Chad to the
offended
party,
by
we
his
take the
absence. I
party
figured he had
back.
something better to be doing.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I see everybody like Gil sending pictures of deer going down. And Manano been hunting pigs. All I know is
They
Coach
killed some big
working
deer
hard.
too, man.
Yeah.
Them boys in Oklahoma been whacking some big old bucks,
Yeah.
dude. It's been
Yeah.
phenomenal. They
Yeah.
they ain't let Big O get turned loose up there on the Red River yet, boy. I'll show them what really lives there. I put them horns together and go to using my grunt call. It is so fun hunting there because those bucks are not hunted, you know. They're just not. I mean, they're pretty unassuming, and it's fun to hunt, man. They got and since they've had some work done there where it's alleviated some pressure, it's even better now.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we've been running some hunts in our area over here.
Yeah.
Man, I tell you what, I feel for a lot of people out of there, because if it's like it's been here, it's been like daggum springtime here. I mean, we're talking, here it is November, and we've had over 70 degrees, I think, for the last 3 days.
Wow.
I looked at Roswell. Roswell was like supposed to be close to 90 degrees.
Yeah.
It was 90 in Amarillo.
Unbelievable.
We've been unseasonably warm. I mean, we got some weather 1 or 2 days through that second rifle, and a little weather came in today, but we heat back up. I think they said mid 60s.
We're
You know,
supposed to drop a little this weekend.
I had somebody that asked me about that, because they were really talking about, they were talking about elk and the season and how the elk were quiet, and he travels a lot and says, he's in Wyoming. Hey, how you did there, Jim? And he's in Wyoming, and he does a lot of traveling. He says he's talking to people all around the state, and everybody he's talking to is saying, well, they went to their best honey holes and stuff like that, and the elk weren't in the same places that they find them.
Look at Manano. Sorry, Joe. Look at Manano. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Emoji think it's just going
I'm
off.
trying to remove all this. What?
He got his cool shades on, bro.
Oh my God, dude.
Wow.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but that
Look
is
at Cody's
just
bug,
awesome.
man.
Yo, I don't know how to do it, bro.
Oh man.
This is like having a
he's got
seventh grade
big
class.
nose
This is
on
like
there,
having a
dude.
seventh grade class on for the first time, man.
Joe's just talking, and I'm like, what the hell's going on with Manano now?
Man, this emoji, man, is killing me.
I'm gonna keep my camera on and ready, Manano.
It's so
Lord.
funny, man.
Yeah, get a good shot of him, man. So, and one thing that we were talking about with that, Jim and I, was that, he was saying how people were not finding elk this year where they found them. They said had a really, really wet, spring, summer out there, and they thought that they were going to find a lot of big bulls with really great growth, but they weren't finding them. That, a lot of the bulls were the smaller bulls that they were coming across, and they just weren't finding elk in the same places. And we were having that conversation, and that's one of the things that I told him is when you have that type of year, all right, let's go this way. When you have those dry seasons and you have limited good grass and elk are concentrated, I think you're going to see those boogers in the same places that you've seen them year after year, because they are having to concentrate there. But I really think when you have those really, really wet seasons and
They
you
can
get
go
good
anywhere.
grass spread out, that those big guys, man, it ain't their first rodeo. And even some of those old cows, man, instead of going to those places they've been forced to eat, they can go to some of those other areas that are less pressured and go to different places.
Yeah, and not come down at all.
Yeah.
They can stay up in the mountains and be by their springs, natural fed springs that are coming out that have been charged up all year with the big rains and whatnot. I mean, the aquifers are all charged. And then the grass, like you said, Joe, I saw that where we were guiding this year. I mean, they just didn't really need to come down. They could stay up there the whole time. The weather wasn't driving them down, less bugs, less pressure. the whole time.
Yeah, there was no
Salt.
bad weather to do it. They had plenty of grass. It wasn't dry. It was so we had groups of cows, and that's what you need to get the bulls that were staying up high in those areas where there was less pressure. They didn't have to worry about going down to areas and having to travel miles to get to water. They had areas around that. So that's something for everybody to kind of think about, is when you, especially experienced hunters that have been hunting year after year after year, and they get those places they kind of count on that they're going to be there, and then you go in and they're just not there. Well, I really think that's what happens. They're finding a little bit of relief in another place because there's plenty of food, right?
Definitely. Well, Joe, you got an announcement to make for all our listeners for sure, huh?
Yeah. So I think I told everybody on the last one, but I want to make sure that we talk to people that are in Colorado. We're going to be in Denver. ElkBros is going to be in Denver at the International Sportsman's Expo this January 11th through the 14th. I'm real excited about that. We have so many listeners from that area. Like to have some of y'all come by the booth, do some calling stuff. Bring your calls. If you don't bring some calls, you can buy some calls because we'll have them there. We'll have the soloists there. We're trying to get some of the boys to be there as well.
Big O will be there.
Yeah, Gil, you're going to be there, huh?
Yep, I'll be there.
Yeah, and I think
it's only a short drive for me, so I'm be there.
Absolutely,
Sweet.
man. Very cool. And so we're excited about that. I'm going to do a couple of seminars there. So hope to see you guys in Denver. All right.
Absolutely.
January 11th through the 14th.
Well, let's get this party started and head over to our ElkBros mailbox, Joe.
All right. Cabez.
Okay, we have a question from David Zaitsev from Vancouver, Washington. He asked, during the early season, I use elk calls, but during the late season, I do not. I am a fairly new hunter, as it is my third year elk hunting, and I am not the best caller. My question is, are elk calls effective during the late season in late November, mid-December, or is calling not the best option for that time of year? Is calling a good option? If calling is a good option, what sounds scenarios do you think would be most effective? And of course, you can't call during those times, and I'll let our experts on the panel tell you why. So, Guy, it's all yours.
I was going to say the fairly new hunter thing, right? And that, if that is the reason that you're not calling, especially in that, I think, Washington, I want to say that they start sometime late August and run through September. I think that's a critical error, right? If you're not blowing those diaphragms or externals and using those calls, you're not expanding your repertoire. You're not learning in the field. You're not seeing if you're really a good caller, right? We always play to our ears, and we're reluctant to do what we should be doing in the field and letting the elk tell us what kind of caller we are. Now, there's some folks that sound like... I can't say it on here, but my boys know what I'm
bit their
talking
finger
off. But yeah, my first thing on that would be Chav. He needs to be calling. Third year elk caller or not, man, you need to be tooting them diaphragms. They're effective in the late season. I'm not very familiar with Washington and their cycle up there. I'm gonna say that you can do some calling, but November is getting kind of late if you're thinking about cow calling and things like that, and piping off challenge bugles and whatnot. So you're past your rut. But your locates and things like that are still going to be effective, right? Elk are communicating all year long, and you just have to expand that repertoire and understand, what you're talking in their language.
Yeah. The only problem is that once those big bulls split off, I mean, yeah, you can actually use cow calls to bring a herd to you. I mean, if you're looking for a small bull or if you're looking for a cow, you can use those cow calls to pull them to you.
Lost calf.
Yeah, lost calf. You can do things like that. But if, I see a lot of people right now, and that's actually in our conversation for later on in this, that, they're looking, because they find a herd of elk, they think they're going to find a big bull. And you just got to understand the elk behavior, what they're doing, what their cycle is, what they're doing per time of year. And there's a point probably, and it depends. I mean, they'll kind of hang out, but right around October 11th, those big dudes have split off and they've gone into sanctuary. And, even though you're pulling in and you get with the herd, most of the time it's going to be smaller bulls. And I hear a lot of people that are like, man, there just ain't no big bulls here, because they're seeing herds of elk and they're seeing smaller bulls with those herds. And there are big bulls, but you got to get off and you got to find them puppies in the holes where they're recovering. So it gets a little bit later. And even now, when those bulls, some of those other guys start splitting off and heading out and doing first those small groups of bachelor groups, and some of the big guys are off, then it becomes actually feast or famine. And I see this for deer hunters. I've been seeing that right now for deer hunters, that, you've got a lot of bachelor groups of bucks. So you're not hitting bucks here and a buck there and a buck there and a buck. You can hit 10 of them together, 6 of them together. So it's almost feast or famine sometimes. So that's kind of how it is as well with the elk. So when you're talking about calling, if there was any kind of scenario that I would do at a time in October, like we said, if there is a bull that's with them and you're just trying to get that, well, I'm going to pull the cows, because all that bull's doing is following those cows. And if I was going to do anything to try to give bulls in the area the idea that there is a cow that is coming heat, I might do a little bit of a rut fest and see if they're going to come and check that out. That would be, but I got to know that I'm in the area where those boogers are. So you just don't go out and set up on the edge of a meadow and start putting on a scenario and expect elk to come into you.
Right.
It doesn't
Different.
just, yeah.
So looking
November
at
and December are much more effective to be glassing up high,
Absolutely.
right, and find out where they're moving, and they will bunch together. Especially the satellite bulls, they're going to be on the outskirts of some of those bigger herds of cows. But for me, what's been successful for me is calling the cows to me, cutting the distance. Those cows might be 500, 600, 800 yards away, but as soon as I can get the cows' attention, I bring the bulls in within 200 yards. It's a whole lot easier shot than trying to make
that was in
600.
October, right, bro? When that was happening, right?
Yeah.
So,
and later, from mid to late October, right? So, and then I've hunted before in November where the same thing, those bulls will start branching off. Those bigger bulls will start branching off and leaving those bigger herds. And like you said, Joe, they're going to heal up and stuff like that. But you can still find some big old bulls in the first part of December that are by themselves, kind of like you said, in them holes, right?
But see,
in
the
them
key
big
was,
holes.
like you said, was by themselves. See, so
Right.
that's the thing I'm trying to, just because you're finding a lot of track and you're finding a lot of cows doesn't
Don't
mean
mean
you're
gonna
going to
be
find big
bulls.
bulls later on.
Right.
Like, you got to look.
it doesn't even look like it. I mean, based on what I'm looking on the Washington regs right now. I mean, it's antlerless only, early December to the end of December.
Not on private.
No, I mean, I don't know if that's the question.
Yeah, we don't know whether he's
Yeah.
on private or if he's hunting public ground. But, that late to mid December, man, you can kill some big bulls if you find out where they're at, because they're healing up. They're getting ready, and they're got to eat because this winter's coming. It's a real deal for them. They're slaves to their bellies, man, and they have got to go eat. So you find some good ground where, where they have, and I found out too that a lot of times where they summer is where they'll go back and start to eat again, because there was plenty of food there before. So wherever you found them summer ranging, a lot of times they'll be there if the big snows haven't come and stuff like that. So just start trying to find them in those corridors where they're moving up and down, or around water sources and stuff like that. But
And see, also, when you're talking about feed like that, always associate feed with the size of the group.
Yeah.
So, you're talking about single bulls, they can get in an area in a sanctuary and they got plenty for that. They're going to have water nearby someplace, but they're going to do as little work as possible. They're just like us on a Sunday wanting to sit on the couch, watch football. Yeah. So, whereas, you start now talking about because these groups of cows start coming together and now getting big herds, and now they've got to be in areas where they can get amount of feed and rotate through that. So, Yeah, it's a little,
And I think you answered his question good, man. For me, the sounds that I would use would be, depending on what my scenario was, it would definitely be cow and calf sounds, and then maybe a location bugle, just to sound like there's a herd there, right? But that would be about all I'd use and lost calf. That lost calf, you can call the cows to you.
yeah,
So,
most November, December for me, I'm listening for them and trying to move in on them and
Yeah.
using my call only if I need to stop something. I'm not really doing a whole lot of calling. So
That's a great point too, Joe. Is we using the cow call to stop them? I did that 3 times this year, and stopped them all 3 times, and they look back like, man, what was that? And they're a long ways off, but you can stop them every time. They're
Yep.
fatal flaw.
Hey man, I tell you what, Washington has some pretty good freaking seasons if it wasn't for the other regs that hold you down. I mean, they're hunting certain hunts there, man. You're hunting through the end of January.
Yeah.
for elk.
Wow. Are those Rosies or are those Rockies?
They have
You have both. They have
Yeah.
both.
Yeah, they got both. Tony Romero from Idaho. What's up, brother? He says, I'm a hunter here in Idaho. I hunt all kinds of animals, but elk is what I love the most. I've been hunting elk for about 10 to 12 years and have had some success on and off throughout that time. I am confident that I could find elk and call them in and consider myself to be a decent hunter. However, with that being said, I'm always trying to learn and evolve to become better every year. I've taken a few different online courses, but I feel that what is being talked about or taught is very basic and repetitive. My question is, what will I gain as a seasoned hunter by taking the ElkBros training? How does it compare to the other educational training out there? I'm going to take the course no matter what, but I'd like to hear your perspective, what the thought process was when creating this training series. Okay, so since this was with my name on it, I want to go to KK and I want to talk on it before Joe says anything about it, because I think with KK actually going through it, I've been through every single GD course offered online to understand all this stuff. So I think I got some good input. So go ahead, KK.
So I guess what I would say is that, I did the same thing as you. I've been through several different courses. While they all offered a different perspective, the one thing that I'll say about the course that Joe put together was it kind of put it together soup to nuts. And it was able to teach me and take me from a guy that had never been, well, it would take a guy that has never been out in the field in the mountains and take him from soup to nuts. And from finding elk, where to look, how to scout, how to assess a situation, from the time you find sign until the time you actually get on the elk, until you actually are in the situation where you're pulling the bow back and letting an arrow go. And with Joe's coaching, it walked it from the finish line backwards, and I like that because I've been with several different people, whether it be whitetails, hogs, all the way up to elk. If you don't know how to kill an elk or kill a hog or kill a deer, if you can't do that, then everything else is a moot point. And what I've seen is you can actually train all the way up to the finish line, and if you can't actually capitalize on it, then you failed on everything before that. And I don't know if that makes sense, but
Absolutely.
at a certain point you got to become a killer, and everybody can take that in a bad connotation, but it is what
We
we're
understand you.
that's what we're out there to do. We're out there to
Finish.
kill an elk. We're out there to finish. And what I learned is you got to be able to finish first, and everything else will come before that. And just one season of going through Joe's course, I had the exceptional opportunity to hunt with you guys that first year. And I took all that knowledge that Joe put into a book, and I was able to see it and follow you guys and do all that. And then, we were fortunate enough, we killed one that last day, Joe, and to see that all come to fruition, man, it just clicked something in my brain. I was like, okay, I can do this. And from then on out, I tell you, this year, every single moment that I got out of the truck, or every single moment that I left camp and started hiking into the woods, I was absolutely confident that it was just, we were 10 to 15 seconds from making it really happen. So that's the one thing that I could say about it is that I believe at all the courses that I learned confidence, not only in the process, but I was also taught confidence from you guys through it all. And it's made me a better hunter. So I hope that all made sense. I'm sure I rambled on that, but
No, it made sense,
Oh,
bro.
it was pretty
I heard some things.
smooth.
Yeah, but Guy, you wanted to say something.
So I mean, KK kind of said it all, but he did ramble on a little bit. But no, in all seriousness, the biggest thing that I saw in it was, like KK said, starting at the finish line and then working back from it. Right. So if you're midstream in September, right, and you're already thinking about what's next because it's already been played out through that course, right? So you're taking some of the guessing of what's next out. The fact that you're starting at the finish line and running that race backwards, man, is huge. It's huge in the way that the base camp is laid out. There's some really good GD courses out there, right? But being able to look at the potentiality of what's next and understand what I need to do to progress to that next step, man, it's hands down, it's freaking phenomenal. And then I think with sorry, Bo, with Joe's, not just his experience as a hunter, but with his guide experience, right? He's been able to take hundreds of clients and see the success and failure through that and then equate that into base camp as well, right? And it's not just his perspective and what works for him all the time, but it's that gaining knowledge from those other experiences and those fatal flaws, we'll say, that people make out there, and then being able to better them and the course through that kind of stuff. I think it makes it a home run for those 2 points for me.
Yeah, when he truly says it's 40 years worth of experience, it truly is. And then you put the crew around him, and it's even added on top of that, right? Everybody's contributed to that, to those pods that are in the base camp. It's truly the best course I've ever seen online. That's a bold statement, but it's ours, and I'll stand behind it, and I'll take the Pepsi challenge with all them other comers that are out there. At the end of the day, if you want to learn how to hunt elk and finish, right, this is the best course I've ever seen to do. Are there more in-depth courses on other things? Yeah, but if you want to learn how to finish and how to have 100 years worth of experience there that has taught us what not to do, this is there. You got it. It's a no-brainer. Go through it. And you know what? This guy, what was his name?
Tony
Romero.
Tony
Romero. Tony,
Romero.
what we want is, since you've gone through the other courses, what we want is, we want to hear from you. Because you're going to go through this anyway. We want, you to reply and review us, man, good, bad, or indifferent. Don't send us no butthole message, but at the end of the day, I want to hear from you, because you've been through these courses. We want to hear from you and how well you enjoyed the course and what it did to take you to the next level. You just heard from Cody Kirkpatrick. He went through the course, went through our training session, and then came into camp with us, right? And actually hunted with the crew. And this guy, not only that, he's guiding. He's a licensed guide now in New Mexico, and killed it this year. Called in, I don't know how many bulls, but at the end of the day, Cody's He's one of our Elk Bros coaches. He came from the bottom, and then, we loved his attitude. We
the
loved
bottom,
everything he
KK.
stood. Yeah, he came from
Do
the
you like
bottom with us, right? And not knowing a whole hell of a lot. Went through the course, and then got in there with us and started mixing it up. And
Well,
now he's one of our coaches.
so Cody had, and here's how I want to apply to this question, because Cody had hunted elk. Cody had been out hunting elk all through Colorado with his dad and different things. He was a seasoned hunter. But see, that's a relative term. I mean, I guide with fellas that have been guiding on ranch for 20 years, 25 years. And because they know the ranch, they know where the elk are going to be on that ranch, they're very successful. When it comes to understanding the behavior overall, like take them out of that area and put in another area, they could struggle in some of that. Not all of them. Some are incredible hunters, right? But I've seen guys that are seasoned guides that you put them in state land, you put them on public land, and with the other things that are happening, without a controlled environment there. And what I mean by controlled is knowing where everybody's at, not being on top of each other. Critters are not pushed, different things like that. You put them there and they struggle with some of that because there's a lot of elements they don't have to deal with, because those animals, when they're not boogered and they're on a large parcel there, are going to do the same things day in, day out. Now, some of that hunting pressure on there by the guides can affect it, but they know how it does because they've been on there year after year. So if they're not here, they're going to be here, right?
Yeah.
So
Wind's doing this, we know where they're going.
Just because you're a seasoned hunter, what I saw is that, you've had some on and off success. What I'd like for you to have, Tony, is I'd like for you to be successful every friggin' year, man, no matter what situation that you're put in. Now, does that mean that there can be a year you don't kill? No, it means friggin' elk hunting. We know that. And I think when you talk about stuff that's repetitive, well, number one, it is elk hunting. It's not recreated. There are things that a lot of us do that are going to be similar because it is elk hunting and they act in a certain way. The key is understanding that, being able to understand the whys of how you do things and when you do things. And that's the biggest problem I see. Now, for me, I think the main difference between my success and a lot of great hunters out there that are able to have encounters is in the finishing. And, I take a look, and when we look at successful teams, you look at successful football teams, you look at successful basketball teams, you can take any team and you find out why are they successful? Because they know how to finish. And people will say that. They get in there, they get in a situation, and man, they know how to finish. Well, that's what my goal of my course is, to get you in a place where you can create encounters so that you, and listen to what I say in there, not just have encounters, create encounters. Because if you are creating your own encounters, you're increasing your odds. If you're increasing your odds, you're putting yourself in a situation where now you can finish. And if you learn how to be efficient in that finishing, dude, one year, this group, we went 4 elk in 4 days with every call-in that happened there. That's efficient right there, And
Many times
from
5 out of 6.
Yeah, man.
And with a miss or a wound,
Absolutely. And you take a look at the different years of experience there. Now you take Cody, man. Cody, with his experience that he had, all he needed was some introduction to some other processes. That's all he did. And he was hungry for it.
Yep.
He's been hungry for it. He soaks it in. He saw how it worked out there, because I'm telling you, man, this guy was just grabbing it. And the reason I wanted Cody to be on this team is because of his passion, his want to, he goes out and it's about the hunt. It's not about the kill. It's about the hunt. He loves the daggum hunt, and he loves to explore and to add it to it. It's the same thing Manano's been doing over the years, just adding this stuff into his repertoire. He's an incredible hunter, but you start adding the knowledge set,
and being able to call down.
Yeah. So there it is in
elk ain't safe.
I get real excited when I talk about this and I talk about my stuff, and I talk about what we put into it, because look, you're only going to get out of something what you put into it. And I coached, I'm Leroy Chavis right there, and I coached together for 30 years, man. And we had a lot of success. I mean, we brought home a lot of state trophies and hardware. But every year you saw us at coaching clinics, every year. Because when we were there listening to that, there were two things that happened. Either we were getting affirmation that what we were doing was working or was,
Yeah.
or we would pick up one nugget, man.
Definitely.
And if we could
need
pick
a
up
juice.
one nugget to improve the success of the people we're working with, to help all of us be successful, then it was a win.
No
So,
doubt.
I tell you, Bud, man, I know a lot of people that will put $80 in a vehicle and they'll drive someplace to try to have some success, and do it over and over and over again. Or imagine, the gear that you put into. I don't know about you, but I've looked in, I tried to buy a camo jacket and I took a look at the price. And man, that camo jacket was 200 and some to $300, right? And that camo jacket looks nice and it makes me feel good. And, I look good around the fellas, but it ain't helping what's between these 6 inches between my ears.
Right.
And that is what's going to do it for you. So that's what we do on this course. And that's the goal of it. And, everything that I've done when I've coached has been teaching kids first what the success looked like. What does it feel like to clear that bar? What does it feel like to cross that tape? What does it feel like to shoot that last second goal? What does it feel like to get down 2 minutes in that 2-minute drill and kick a field goal? And then, man, I could be the best dribbler in the world, but if I can't score, it don't matter, right?
Pass.
Yep.
Joe, one of the things that always stands out to me, and I'm not saying that we've had that particular question before, right? But one of the things that stands out is I almost feel like, and this is probably not what Tony's asking or saying, but I always feel like people are looking for the solution. Right. Instead of understanding, okay, this animal does this, whatever, I'm this kind of hunter, right? Is how do you take that information that's presented, right? Mm-hmm. Be it, as he stated, basic or repetitive, how do you take that and equate it to your hunting style, to the type of hunter you are? Because it's not that piece, that educational piece is not the total for your success. That's not going to be the end all be all. And you can go through all these courses. You're still going to have to equate it to your area, how you hunt. Is it base camp hunt? Is it a backcountry hunt? However you're doing it, right? You gotta take that stuff and just look at it as additions to your repertoire. What works for you? What doesn't work for you? If it ain't working, cancel it, and then get the bits and pieces from the others.
One thing that I say about my course, and I tell people, is this: there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be in position to kill an animal and have done things in 100 different ways. But are they able to finish, right? And so no matter what it took to get you in that position, I want to make sure that you're successful at that end and that you're able to pop that tag and punch it and put it on that critter. That's my goal. So we can tell you what we think you should use for equipment. We can tell you how you should practice and how you should get in shape. We can tell you all that stuff. But there's a ton of information that applies to everybody in different ways down there. But man, when you get within that 15 yards, 20 yards, 30 yards of that animal, when you're right there, all of us are going to get there in so many different variables. Now you got to know what to do in that moment. Now, is everybody's course going to teach you that? I don't know. I don't know if they do or not. But I'm going to tell you what you need to do to get through and to finish in that process, okay? And then come backwards. How to get yourself in there, how to create those encounters, what that behavior is like, what a rut really is, what those animals are saying, how to talk to them in different ways, and how to respond when they do talk to you. There's so many people that don't know how to do that. They hear a bugle, and man, it's like, score, we're done. You ain't done at that point.
Just starting.
Just starting, right?
That's honestly, that's where everybody goes south. Is they hear the bugle, and then everything you read and talked about and listened to on a podcast and YouTube video, that 6 inches is hollow at that point.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Exactly.
right? I mean, it just right out the ear.
Tony, I really, really appreciate the question, man, because
We want to hear back from you, Tony.
yeah, it's not very often that I go and talk about the course. And, it's really the bread and butter for us. And I figure for me, I put an ad in this, you'll hear it if you listen to this podcast. I put an ad in there. If you like what you hear, you can learn more right here. And I've pretty much let that do the talking, and I'm hoping that word of mouth, guys that like it will tell other people. So I really appreciate the question, man, and the opportunity just to be proud of what we're doing.
Definitely.
All right, so we got Ken Rice from Phelan, California. He says, when my hunt starts, I investigate potential feed areas and any new areas. It's disappointing when no sign exists in those areas. So what I might think is a good feed source may in fact not be what elk need or want. Maybe low moisture change the feed source, or what I thought was a good feed doesn't provide the nutritional needs for elk. How do you determine a good feed source during e-scouting or during the hunt? Does that feed source potentially change with weather from early to late archery season? He says, granted, feed sources in Montana are likely to be different than that of New Mexico. So generalities in feed source assessment is my interest.
Need to know if he's hunting mountain country or plains country, or
But grass is
that. Sorry, Jojo.
Yeah, no, go ahead, man. They're grazers. They're going to eat
man.
grass. Some grasses are better than others. Some have more nutrients. They know that.
Green grass.
The problem I have with that, Ken, is that's one tidbit of the information that you need to understand that area, right? I mean, it's just like us. We need food, water, shelter, right? Elk are no different than us. So if we're only looking for potential feed, we're doing ourselves a disservice. We need to look at the terrain,
no water,
where's the water source, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So you're on the right track to a point, but you're missing a lot of the information you should be trying to gather, especially from an e-scouting position. It's almost impossible to determine a feed source, and I would be looking at terrain features more than that.
Absolutely.
Understanding that road system and where that terrain system is going to allow them to get away from those pressures of season, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it's almost like the reverse of what you were planning to do. Find the water source and then find out if there's a bedding area bedding area close by, and then look for the food source.
Around northeast facing.
You know what? Okay, hold on. Let's talk about this, okay? Because it's been I've listened to some podcasts after season and this week and last week, and man, the northeast, north facing, and I've talked to a couple of people, man, blow that ish out the frickin' water. Because I tell you what, and I'm not going to say this, the facing slope that I've seen them on, so folks don't figure out where I was at, but did not have any bearing on where those elk. If I would have went with that and said that's the only place that they're going to be, I would have never been in as many animals and as many bulls as we were this season.
Well, that's exactly what we found on the Mooch Ranch. Right. They were on all the northeast facing slopes.
That's
the only place you could see them.
A couple people, and they were
I've hunted areas with cuts in there and besides that thick timber that provided shade that they could get secluded from, especially. Yeah, I mean, it can, and then you go to Arizona and these places that are flat and they only, they don't.
All they got cedar.
They're going to bed down under the shade in the cedar, right? Yep. So, it just depends on the type.
If he's hunting that area around the Milk River or something like that, the Bitterroot, it's just different. Those are big coulees that they're dealing with, and not big mountainous terrain with aspens and pondos and stuff like that. So better off knowing where he's at and what kind of food source. But guy's 100% right. Look for the terrain that you're hunting, and look for the drainages that lead down into feeding areas and bedding areas with water. And understand, elk will go miles. I'm talking miles to go to water, man.
If they
They'll
don't have
bed down
to,
in an area 3 to 5 miles away.
but if they don't have to, they won't. You
No,
know,
for real, for real. But I know some herds of elk that we've hunted. They travel miles to go to water,
yeah,
man.
sure.
You know, they just do. That's their MO every day, and they don't take them long. They go 3 miles in a snap of a finger. You know,
Well, that's like he's saying, man. I look at features. I like crow's feet. I like
definitely
drainages that come
knuckles,
together. I,
knuckles that are
Yeah,
over
and
the
I
top.
like when some of those finger ridges, have those saddles where one side goes to the other so that they can feed over on one side, they can get on the other side and bed down wherever they can find the thick timber. And then, if when you have those types of saddles from one side to the other, whether it's east to west, whether it's north to south, those critters find that timber on one area, they find the feed on the other, they get security, and generally there's going to be in that drainage, there's going to be a water source down at the bottom of it. So,
Ferns, willow
yeah,
trees.
Which
Those willow trees are letting you know that there's water in the area, man. Those are the things that you look for in them drainages is where that water source is. The springs that are up high, they'll have willows around them. They'll have greener grasses in these crevices. You'll see it on a lot of your e-scouting.
if you find those benches and you find those terrains, man, yeah,
Definitely.
especially you find those string benches of any kind that go down to different areas that lets them bed up on a side to have that security, and they can even munch on some of those areas in there,
Yeah. And I'm not saying they won't bed on a south facing slope that's got a big bench in there with some trees where it's all bedded and big cedars or
absolutely.
big trees. They will, but it's your job to find that in your e-scouting. You can find those big dark places at times too with the bigger timber. I have been on the lake many days and I look across at a bank and it's real shady over there. And I'm like, that's a morning time spot because where the sun comes up in the east and it's a north facing bank, it's shady there almost half the day. And I'm like, I bet the water temperature's 5 degrees cooler over there, right? I idle over there, and sure enough, it's 5 degrees cooler, right? Because it's shadier. These elk are no different, especially in these early seasons. They want to stay as cool as they can, stay out of the bugs and as cool as they can because it gets warm even in Montana, So you can find the places like Chav said, that was a huge nugget. You can find bedding areas, man, and adjacent to feeding and water, you got a gold mine.
And I was going to just emphasize when you're looking at those bedding areas, right? Dark timber doesn't necessarily mean it's a bedding area,
That's
right?
right.
Joe said it benches, and even looking at your prevailing or your dominant wind feature coming through that terrain, right? That for me, when I'm looking for bedding, if I'm e-scouting, the ease of getting there and my predominant wind is going to determine whether or not I feel like it's going to be a successful key into a bedding area.
Yeah, and Joe and I hunted that moose, and that moose bedded in that agriculture field on that prevailing wind. That ain't his first time bedding there, man. That wind whipped by him every day there. Why? Because that's what he knew it was going to be. That was his bed all the time out there. It was mashed down around there like, somebody had a party there all night. And that bull set up on the end of that point because of the prevailing wind sweeps the wind right by him from anywhere. He's going to catch wind coming from the direction he thought danger was going to come from. So they set up, like Guy said, they set up predominantly in those wind situations so they can keep their six covered.
Yeah. And I just want to tell you, when it comes to something like that and you're actually going during the hunt, dude, wherever you think that is, just hit the roads, man. Hit the road, get around, find out where animals, if they're hitting those, going across those roads, look at where where you're finding the track, where you're not finding the track. Is it old track because they got to go from one place to the other? And I mean, cover country like that. And that'll tell you right away, man. You'll be able to tell our critters actually moving through there. Find those semi saddles, in those lower areas where there is terrain that has thick trees and kind of saddles out, those critters will move through those saddles, those lower saddles as well. And those are places to find track and where they go on roads, and find those closed roads where nobody can go on, and check those to see what kind of track you're finding on there. That will tell you things right away and help you out as far as finding where those animals are moving through, to know where they're going from one place to the other, and then you can backwards engineer some of that. So that's some of the things we would do. But think grass first, especially during that time of year. That's what they're going to be doing. They find they are primarily grazers, man. Okay.
Unless you're in some big oak brush country, and then they love that oak brush, man.
If you have
there's-
acorns or pinon or anything, oh
Yes.
yeah, absolutely.
They love it. If you're in that lower country with oak brush and pinon and you got acorns, buddy, they're going to be around it, especially them
Absolutely.
cows. Well, guys, you know what time it is. It's time for our Elk Bros shout outs. If you're new to our show, this is just a shout out to the followers in a few cities with the most listeners topping our charts this week, Joe.
Yeah, and just a reminder, everybody out there, on our next show, we will again be rocking the Elk Bros Spin a Winner Wheel, and someone will win an awesome Wapiti River diaphragm call, as well as another one of our new Burnham Red diaphragms that's produced by our buddy Mark over at Needham by Carlton. It's easy to enter. All you got to do is give us a review on Apple Podcasts or give us a comment on our YouTube channel. And very important, make sure you include your name and where you're from. And then we'll place your name on our Elk Bros Spin a Winner Wheel. And who knows, you just might be a winner. How did I do with that, man? Did that sound?
Smoked it.
So can we enter to get a Burnham Red?
I'll get a Burnham Red to you, bro.
I'm gonna just put on there KK's a prick, and then KK do the same to me, and then
You
we'll,
ain't got
just-
one? You
we'll
got
be
one?
entered into the Burnham
You
Red
gotta be
Spin a
nice,
Winner.
man. Gotta be
That is nice. We said we call each other a prick, and it's done deal. We just want an entry.
Prick's in the dictionary, Joe. It's not a bad word.
Oh.
Here we go. Jav.
Okay, this city is nicknamed Swan City due to its sizable population of swans and is home to Publix, the supermarket chain. This city was first named Alapaha after the Alapaha River, then Milltown because of the numerous mills in the area. Then finally arrived at its current name, which best describes the area. The region is an outdoorsman's paradise, and this is in Lakeland, Georgia.
Lakeland, Georgia at the top of the list.
Georgia in the house. Awesome.
Heck
Wonder
yeah.
how far that Lakeland, Georgia is from. How far is that town from over there in South Carolina, Joe?
I have no clue where Lakeland is.
I saw a lot of Publix when I was we were playing ball in what's the name of that town in South Carolina? Golly.
Now, unlike you, man, I didn't do the oil field, and I didn't sleep in.
But there were a lot of Publix out that way, right? A lot of Publix chain stores, and I've never even heard of them.
I've never even heard of Publix. So
Yeah, Publix is it's a grocery store.
Oklahoma, I've seen it or something.
Yeah, you saw one in Oklahoma too.
That's the only place I could think of seeing a Publix, but I've seen it. I'm impressed that Gil doesn't know where Lakeland is at.
I don't know where Lakeland's at, but it sounds
I
familiar.
figure if it was Lakeland, it had a lake and he had. So
Yeah.
I was like,
That needs to be a goal, right? Is just get cities here that Gil has never been to.
yeah. There
There's
we
a
go.
bunch of them,
Up
I'm
next.
sure.
With a population of under 3,000, this town is located in Wyoming County in New York State. It was originally established in 1814 as part of the town of Warsaw. It was first named Hebe before its current name. But if you want incredible pizza, it's Big Lo's New York style pizzeria. This is none other to Gainesville, New York.
Gainesville, New York.
It's-
We're still on the East Coast, man.
Yeah,
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's coast.
it's showing out big.
Big Lo's Pizza.
Big Lou's, man.
Lo's.
Hey, Big Lou, send us some slices.
Yeah, man. Freeze it and send it our way.
Yeah, well, heck yeah, because you can
Freeze
Is that the one like pretty thick?
Dude,
with
freezing
cheese on it?
pizza. Freezing pizza is sacrilege like Hawaiian pizza, bro. Come on now. Freeze no pizza,
Hawaiian
and you can't
pizza.
have no pineapples.
With pineapple, man. I fight with my wife all the time when she
But
orders
that's why you got
pineapple.
firecrackers going off behind you when you put your thumbs up, bro.
Oh no, no. No, I think I was able to remove it, bro.
I'm trying to remove it.
Oh,
There
Lord.
it is right there. Pineapple pizza, boy.
Cody.
This town is a transportation center located in a major coal mining region and was named after a Civil War battle in New Jersey. During the Civil War, residents torched their homes and moved out to keep the Union soldiers from keeping their supplies. Though it gets mixed up with a familiar namesake up north, this city is the heart of Mercer County. It is Princeton, West Virginia.
West by God, Virginia's in the house.
There we go. Yeah, Princeton.
All right. I'm up. And JoJo tried it again, Gil. Did you see that?
I did, man. I did.
It's funny. I'm going to give it to him, though. Here's some pretty cool facts. 1 out of every 14 flash memory chips in the world are produced here. This is the fast-growing city named after the prophet in the Book of Mormon. It is known as Silicon Slopes due to the rapid development of the tech industry. Numerous tech companies are headquartered here. Among them are Intel, Adobe Systems, and Ancestry.com. Lehi, Utah.
Utah in the house. Our Mormon brothers to the north.
Yeah, man. Well, Ancestry has come up a ton
Yes.
in conversations with buddies of mine and people, with you, Gil.
Yeah.
I was just with a real good friend of mine. We're both 60 years old. God, it's so weird to even say that. I don't understand that number, man. And he's like, he was adopted and he found his birth mom and his sister and
that's so
brother
cool,
and everything
man.
after 60 years, dude.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
cool.
that's because of Ancestry. Yeah.
Yep. My daughter found out. She thought I had an illegitimate child, and I didn't. It wasn't me. It was my late father. And, God bless him. It was something else. I mean, been 54 years in my life, and just 2 years ago, I found out that I had another sibling. It was awfully enlightening. I can tell you that. But it was because of Ancestry.com. And my daughter found out that I'd been married twice because of Ancestry.com. Explaining that to them. Now, they found out that before they graduated high school, but Kelly and I just never divulged that part of our life before. And she walked in and thought she found some great caper. Mom, did you know Dad was married before?
So Manano, are you on Ancestry, bro?
No, I'm not, bro.
No?
No, I don't think so.
You haven't found any relatives out there that are surprises or anything?
No.
Like Luis? Luis, like, you guys find out that you really are related or something? Man?
Luis
No,
tells
man,
him all the time that his
He
kids got
found
more
that
Luis's
he
blood
apparently
in than
it's related to the Prince of Gales or something like that, or the he was bragging about that.
Yeah, the Spanish prince.
Yeah.
The Spanish prince. Yeah, well, Luis has always said that Luis's blood is more in Manano's kids than Manano's. So
Yeah,
that's what he says all the time.
I think I heard him tell him one time, it's okay, bro, man. It's not who, really gave the child the blood. It's about
Right,
who
who believed.
right?
Yeah, who they believe. That's right.
Right.
All right, it's time now.
Dang.
You got to give it to us. You got to give it to us there, Guy.
The main content.
Oh, dude, it was so good. Guys, anyone out there that could, all of us probably would like to turn back time a little bit, right, Joe, and use the time machine this past season.
Oh, man. Yeah.
If you had one, or you could use it for yourself or someone else, what are some of the mistakes, though, fellas, that or possible miscues or even misconceptions we saw or experienced that, you'd want to warn other hunters about something? And I'm talking about the juice, not all around about it, but the actual juice that we feel like that we would want to warn other hunters about. And you can include both, archery and rifle season as well.
I want to start.
Yeah,
I'm
go
glad
ahead,
you
Chad.
did that, Chav. I was like, we need to get the quietest fellas on here to start
Yeah.
this out, man. So we'll go Chav, Manano, and then Cody, man.
Cody, yeah.
We'll see what
Okay, sounds good. I have a couple of points that may relate to everybody, but probably more the elder hunter or the very young hunter, and that's having to do with drying your bow. And I know Cody could probably relate to this too. Sometimes there's a tendency for people to try and draw as much weight as possible, where in fact the most important factor for success is really the shot placement. So it comes in two different ways. Sometimes early in the morning, you're not warmed up, you've been walking for a while, you're cold, and all of a sudden you have an encounter. And sometimes coupled with the excitement, you're unable to pull your bow back, and
Does that
I know
happen?
it happened.
Does that happen?
I know.
Yeah,
I know
I've watched it happen.
Yeah, and I know it happened to one of Cody's hunters, so he can kind of relate to that. But it happened to me too. I've been practicing shooting from a sitting position where my legs are basically at a 45-degree angle and they're solidly on the ground. And I ended up having to sit in a little tripod seat. So my knees were above my hip. And I think that threw everything off because I tried drawing a couple of times and I could not do it. So what I would suggest for some people is if you can draw 70 pounds, that's awesome. But if you can shoot it at 60 to 65 and use very little effort in pulling back, that's probably better. And we mentioned before we started talking about how white-tailed deer can hear just about anything. It's important that you break your bow before you set up. But what I mean by that is just pull it at least one time, because break it over, because it seems like every bow has like a little creaking sound. Some don't, but it may creak on you, and you don't want that either, because the animals we hunt have extremely good ears. So pulling back the bow, that I experienced that, and that's something that until you get to that point, you don't know. And I recall one time too, I was wearing a one-piece. If you can visualize those,
coveralls.
Jumper, yeah,
yeah,
coveralls.
Yeah, and I was kneeling down, so without me knowing it had tightened all my clothing. So when I tried to pull back, I couldn't because there was no give in the clothing I was wearing. But I could pull it, so that's something to think about too. That was my.
That becomes especially important if you're doing a backcountry hunt, right? Is you're beating brush, you're in the dirt, your bow's sleeping on the ground, especially if you have a groundless shelter, you're in a hammock. You have to draw. My practice is I wake up in the morning, once the boots are on, I knock an arrow, I draw back, I let it down, and I'm good to go for the day.
Yeah. I don't put an arrow on mine. Before I even step into the woods, I pull mine back and then let it down, because moisture, different things like Chav said, sometimes wax, sometimes dirt, it'll get inside that seat, and you'll go and when you first put it, you'll hear that little popping noise in there, and it's not anything that's going to hurt the bow. It's just it's kind of like seated a little bit in that cam there, and so doing that kind of gets that out. And I do that just about every time I'm going in.
We at ElkBros do not promote drawing your bow without an arrow.
Absolutely.
Just had to throw the disclaimer in there.
Please put an arrow in it. And
I've seen
when you draw your bow, point it at something that you wouldn't mind destroying. I mean, seriously, point it in a safe direction.
I've always been without a release with 3 fingers on it, and I never had to worry about that. You guys with the releases, a lot of crap can happen, I imagine.
Ask Manano. He can tell you exactly how.
I've seen it. I've
when
seen
you
it
let
happen.
somebody drag your bow back, they didn't put an arrow in it. I mean, and they didn't have no release on it. They just had their fingers, and it jumped out of their fingers, man.
I bet you couldn't do that with that new nuclear bow.
That new what?
With your new nuclear bow. You couldn't draw
pull it with 3 fingers.
With fingers?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely can, man. I mean, I've did it for 40 years, so I'm,
but it's a way shorter brace height. It's a lot
You
harder
are
because it pinches
getting
it
old,
back.
Joe.
Yeah. Manano says you get it old, Joe. I tell you one thing, you got, and Chav is 100% right. If you guys cannot sit in a stool with your feet off the ground, sit on your tailgate, sit off your deck, whatever, with your feet not on the ground, and you cannot draw your bow back, you're overpounded. I'm just telling you straight up.
Not even that. You go to the range and you watch folks do the sky archer and come down. The worst thing in the world you could do to blow a situation is to blow it drawing your friggin' bow. If you want to feel like an absolute complete failure, blow it drawing your bow back.
Well, and guys that have never, you know, I do a lot of guiding whitetail hunting and hog hunting, and I've seen guys sitting right next to me and they go to draw their bow back and they can't draw it without poking a hole through the blind or without standing up in some sort of way. They're like, man, you know, whether they have an impingement or whether they're injured or whether they just have never done that. And they're like, man, this is so different, right? When I'm sitting in this weekend, I was sitting in a tree stand, and Luis had it happen to him too. You shoot over an animal or something. I shot dead. I killed 3 raccoons because they're little nuisances around my place. And I shot over the first one. And I mean, I knew what I did. I drew back. I didn't bend at the waist. You know, you got to bend at the waist. You know, I drew back, shot right over the top of him. And I went, man. And what was even worse is it hit a rock and it broke my dang shaft on my arrow. Dude. I was so mad, dude. I now wanted to kill all of them after that, right?
That raccoon was like giving you the California howdy. No, see?
Yeah, but again, you can't. So wild turkeys are probably the litmus test on drawing your bow because their eyes are like eagles. If you can get successfully drawn on wild turkeys in a stand situation, open, not from a ground blind, I'm talking about an open ladder stand or something like that, you're actually, you know, I set my bow on my knee and I draw it straight back. So it's very minimal movement, man. It's hard getting drawn when you got 30 different sets of eyes watching you. Yeah. It's the same thing in our elk woods. If you got to make a big movement to draw that bow and he's in tight, he's in 15 yards, they pick up movement really well, right? They may not see you because you blend in well with your surroundings. You got great 2.0 camo on or whatever that you're wearing, you blend in well, but they pick up movement so well, you know, and it's that big movement that'll blow your whole setup. You know,
it's a good way to freeze them and keep them out of the shooting lane.
Yeah. Or exactly. When you start to draw, they're walking in and all you got to do is draw and stop them. And but it's over with. Right. But by the time you draw, he stops because he sees the movement and he's in front of something. So that's a huge nugget, Chav. Yeah. And being able to draw your bow and turn your poundage down if you can't get it drawn back. Work on getting stronger.
That's a hard one, right? I mean, it's a heavy arrow, fast arrow world, right? And it's been for years. So, you know, everybody wants to max out and they don't really understand the detriment.
Well, the good thing is today's equipment, the technology with these bows now, a 60-pound bow shooting these days is different.
More than enough. 60 pounds.
Bows through animals, man.
Grinders tuning in, thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Elk Hunting Podcast. Our goal is to share our knowledge and help you flatten that learning curve so that you too can have some of the very same incredible experiences that have given all of us here at ElkBros a lifetime of memories. If you like what you hear or see, you can get all of this information plus so much more from our BaseCamp Elk Hunting Training Camp. This course will be like nothing you have ever experienced in concept and structure, using success-based coaching techniques that will elevate your confidence and skill sets, allowing you to see, visualize, understand, and relate every coaching point to what lies ahead, the next step, the next thought process, the next success. By tapping my 30 years of teaching and coaching experience, our camps are developed considering multiple learning modes with text, visuals, audio, as well as video. And BaseCamp will benefit those new to elk hunting all the way to the 10 to 15 year vet. So if you are looking for that one thing to help you fill that tag this year, invest in the most important piece of equipment there is, you. and your elk hunting knowledge. You can find the Blue Collar Elk Hunting Academy and the Base Camp Training Camp at ElkBros.com. That's ElkBros.com. Keep dreaming of the screaming, believing in achieving, and most of all, keep grinding.
My son still shoots 56, 55 to 56
Yeah.
pounds and sails through animals, dude. I mean, blows through critters, kills everything he shoots at, you know. And watching him
That's
draw
true.
a bow in a blind is like, it's effortless. I mean, literally, he never even grunts. You know, I'm a big guy, pretty stout fella. Man, when you grab a hold of that 70-pound bow of mine, you better get with the program, or that thing's going to give you fits getting it back, you know. So, and holding it, you know,
Banana,
being
what
able to hold it.
What about you, bro?
Well, I can bring some to the table about my mistake on this past season, and I'm always trying to do some scouting. I always do before any upcoming season because I'm really picky where I want to be and all that stuff. In that particular case, I mean, this season, I think my year scouting was right on, but because of the blowdowns, I wasn't able to get to many spots. So what I'm trying to say is it's try to put some boots on the ground if you are close, if you are in the area that you will be hunting in, and during this hunting season, do some hiking or something. That way you'll be able to see if you can get to the good spots and stuff. Um, Another mistake was putting a lot of miles. I think I put around 80 miles, 70 something miles this season. I walk a lot, and due to the steep of the terrain, the last 2 days I use an e-bike. Man, that's a game changer, Joe. Game
Absolutely, dude. I'm with you.
No, yeah, no regrets. And it's a game changer.
Well, and
So
I think it depends on the type
The
of
area.
mileage and the reason for the mileage. You know, I think there's ways that sometimes if you can get into areas, and that was the thing, is you were actually trying to get, because of the shape of the land and where we were hunting it, it
right.
created a whole different type of deal, right? So
Yeah. Well, the point is that you have to go all the way up and then follow the reach because of the other side was a blow down, like impossible to walk. And so you have to go like 4 miles to get to start getting to good spots. So,
yeah,
Tough.
doing that back and forth was,
and I think that's an important point about your e-scouting, man, is that a lot of people can look at things on Onyx or anything else like that, and the contour lines are not really going to tell you
no,
that that's
no.
I-
And by the way, Joe, and by the way,
They lie.
Oh yeah, it ain't but about 3 miles that way. Yeah,
right,
3
but
miles, 10 miles up and down. No.
I use both. I use Onyx and I use what I use the most is Google Earth because you can turn and
Yeah,
you're
3D.
able to see
Yeah.
better even the even you can see the blow downs
Yeah.
So
on Google Earth.
let me ask you this: on Google Earth, did you go in and change the slope,
The date.
like accentuation on that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because that's
Yeah, and then
another thing.
you're able to see it, but even though if you see it online when you go when you put boots on the ground, bro, it's
Oh yeah,
different.
because
I mean,
everything gets
it's
flattened out, man, and you don't realize that you have 6 foot high blowdown you got to go through.
yes,
Yeah, that's
yes,
Adds many, many miles to your trip.
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. And
yeah.
when it takes you an hour to get through 400 yards, man, that's tough.
2 hours, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, 400 yards, it's 2
Yeah.
hours.
No, that's a real good point, man. Cody,
man,
you, man?
Mine's pretty simple. It's really basic in the fact of, you're going to the mountains, you're going hunting. And I think that there's something to be said about being able to be by yourself out camping. And I know Guy, he'll have some good content for this, but being able to weather through several days by yourself and being able to stay in the woods where you're able to hunt instead of giving up too soon.
Oh, because yeah, so you're basically, there's guys out there that would have been successful and were in good situations, but not able to. That kind of goes back to that whole mental thing that we were talking about before, right?
Yeah, it's the mental aspect of staying out
Not letting the
there.
hunt break you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So I'd be curious to see what Guy has to say about that.
Well,
staying out there by yourself for several days.
Well, before he does, let me ask it to you this way, though. I mean, if we're going back in a time machine and we're trying to, help them with that mistake or miscue or misconceptions, because we saw that as a failure, what are we going to warn them about? What is going to be the warning? What is going to be the thing that we got to tell them, man?
I think that it's the grind. It's the grind, and the grind gets to everybody in different ways, and it's especially tough. I think it's even more tough when you're by yourself. You don't have somebody next to you saying, "All right, let's go, Cody. Get up, get out of bed, let's go. We're going." Because we've all experienced that. I don't want to get out of bed every day, especially when it's tough. But it's even. I think it's exponentially harder if you're by yourself.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to teach somebody
that can of quit can get opened real quick when you're by yourself.
You have to enjoy it, man. I mean, it's got to be something that you're built for,
Yeah, I mean, and I'm with him. When you're able to use all your tools at your disposal, and you got to go, you're in them, and you're in them every day. Man, it's a whole different hunt than when you grinding out day after day and things aren't going your way, whether it's from the scenarios or whether we're not finding them, whether it's the terrain kicking your ass or the elk are whipping you every time you turn around, wind's not being your friend. I mean, all of those things, and we're not getting good sleep. I mean, I've never done the pack, the pack out hunt or the backcountry hunt where it's just me by myself. I enjoy a camp. I enjoy base camp. I enjoy being around all you guys. And I've hunted rifle, muzzleloader, and bow. So I've hunted all three phases of the season, and I'd much rather be in a camp where I can bounce things off of everybody. I feel like it empowers other hunters. I feel like being able to get affirmation that we're doing the right things or we need to change tactics. I think that's a big plus for us. So I'm with Cody. I can't imagine the level of moxie that you got to have to do what Guy does all the time in being by himself. And I think he's had some people with him, but for the most part, he's by himself a lot.
Yeah, I did one of those in Colorado the year before last in an area in there, and just hammock camped, backpack on there for some days out there, and totally enjoyed it, man. I mean, it's different. You just it's just you and the nature and the area, and I just really enjoyed the solitude a little bit, and I love being with people. I mean, I'm a very people person, but it was just kind of nice to get that change out there. And I've done it before. I think the very first elk hunt that I ever went on was like 10 days by myself in an area, which was really funny. If you hadn't talked in 10 days, when you get out and you get around people and it's weird. That first day you get out there, it's a little weird, man, because
you definitely got to be okay with talking to yourself. Like it has to. You have to be okay.
Can you imagine?
You got to find Joe Wilson.
10 days without saying a word to somebody.
Oh no, you are talking. That's what I'm saying. You are talking. You have to be okay with it because you are holding conversation.
He's got him a Wilson, dude.
And there ain't nobody around you, buddy.
Lord,
I didn't talk for 10 days, man, and I got out, and the first time I heard myself talk,
that's a
little weird.
therapy.
Yeah.
That's
Damn,
therapy.
Joe didn't even want to talk to himself. Like,
I enjoy hunting.
I don't like myself, dude. I mean,
I enjoy hunting whitetail and stuff like that by myself, and I enjoy fishing by myself. I did a lot of it when I was fishing for a living, and I mean, you spend a lot of time with yourself, but I much rather enjoy having my son in the boat with me to talk with and cajole and poke fun at, and
Yeah.
he'd poke fun back at me. I don't know. That's what I prefer. Would I do it? Yeah, I would, but I would much rather do it with, Guy or Joe or Manano or Luis or any of those
Around
guys.
hunt with Beto.
Yeah,
Sorry.
man.
No,
Yeah,
Well,
because they can make
Yeah.
fun of me every day, man. And
But
they
see,
want somebody to poke fun at.
did we
Who
observe?
was it that
Did we observe any of that being a failure point? So that's one thing and I know there are guys out there that have been in great position in animals, but the whole solo thing did not work for them, and they got lonely, they got homesick, and they had to get out of there. So I think the lesson in that is don't do a hunt like that if you've never even gone out and hiked and camped by yourself, man. Because
I wouldn't say that, Joe. I would say go after it. Just remember why you're there. Right? Because that's what defeats us, right? Is when everything else takes that purpose from why we're there away. Because it's grueling, man. It's arduous. All your little demons and all your negative thoughts and all your negative self-talk
kill you.
It will drive you crazy if you let it. But I tell you what, it is the best place to leave all your bull crap is sitting up on a glassing point and remembering while you're there through it. Now, part of being prepared for that type of hunt, this goes to what Cody was wondering, being actually prepared for that hunt physically, mentally. That's a rough one, man, because you got to experience
That's a great point, guy. Because going in a solo hunt, you have to be really conscious about where you can shoot an animal, because you have to be able to take that sucker back. So it's one of the things you have to be really aware of. But I would encourage people to go out even by themselves if they are prepared.
And like Joe said, just if you're going to camp.
Yeah, I was going to say that was my failure point at the end of season. Was getting back there on that bull, being 200-300 yards above him, and then realizing how in the heck am I going to get this giant out of here by myself? I mean, so there's a ton of factors, and you have to be reasonable about where you're putting yourself.
Well, maybe Joe's right. Maybe if you go and do a pseudo hunt that, 5 or 6 days back there when you're scouting or something like that, then you know how you kind of feel, right?
It's different because you don't have the same pressure. I can go in the backcountry for 10 days and go on a hike, right? And I don't have the pressure of the hunt. I don't have that success looming.
Though. I mean, that
different. No, it's
the equipment
different
for it. And
yes. If you talk in respect to physical ability and gear check, yes. Now the weather in September in the high country starts to turn a little bit,
right?
So maybe it's not tested fully, but the pressure of the hunt, the pressure of the notch tag, wanting to be, air quotes successful, and that killer out there, it adds a different element that increases the likelihood of a guy breaking sooner.
So I'm going to switch gears here a little bit because we're often so archery oriented and, running hunts all the way from September and gosh, we'll be going till January. I get to see a lot of things and a lot of people that come in and out, and I want to do some of this. I'm going to throw some of this in as well as for the rifle because there's a lot of people doing that right now. So and I really want to talk about, like, if I could do the time machine back, or if I could talk about these possible miscues and misconceptions, I see so many in different people. And not only those that I experience or people around me experience, but I can tell you this, and I think not only does it apply to the rifle, but it applies. And I'm going to hit this first because this is a little bit of a sermon, and then I'm going to go to the elk hunting part of it and where I see some of this as well. But I see this in archery, and I see it in rifle shooters, rifle hunters as well, is that there's just not enough time spent behind the equipment. You know, be that the gun, be that clothing that they're going to be using on the hunt, the things, their shooting sticks that they're using, or whatever position they're going to do that's not on a sled. You know, I bet you, and honestly, I can, of all my years of doing this, now I've come across some incredible shots, people that are really good with their equipment, but I would be, you know, gosh, I don't even know if I want to say this, but I would say that about 3 out of 10 hunters are really great shots, that know their equipment, that are solid with it, that when they say I'm dialed in, they are dialed in, man.
Wow, only the 30%, Joe?
I think
Yes.
it's less than that.
I think it's less than, I'm with you
I think
guys.
it's less.
I think it's less than that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Look at the 10% success rate.
Yeah.
Right. And if you equate that 10%,
Now you're talking
right,
archery right there, right?
well,
I'm talking.
No,
okay,
I'm
go to
talking
rifle then.
rifle.
Rifle ain't too much
Rifle.
higher.
It ain't
Rifles-
much that ain't. I bet it
Rifle ain't that
20%.
much higher.
It should be around 24%, right around there, 25%.
That ain't a lot.
No, Joe, I don't know if I understood incorrectly, but I'm talking about 30% of the guy. Do they come unprepared as far as the
So it's like this.
Prepared.
Here's the deal with it, Manano, is most of these people shoot their weapons and they go, it's on, it's sighted in. So I'm good to go. And then you get them on a range of 100 yards and they're
They can't hit the
2,
bull in the
3,
ass with a
4
bass fiddle.
inches off to one
Wow.
side.
So okay, yeah, right.
8 inches
70% of them
10
were
inches
off.
off.
And I'm telling you, man, that people need to spend more time knowing their weapon, being as accurate as possible. You know, I don't want to say that one weapon's better than the other. I think it doesn't have anything to do with it. I just think it's about people spending the time behind. And again, not just the weapon, because you can be good with the weapon and you can be on, but had you not worked on the shooting sticks or the position that you're going to shoot from where you're uncomfortable, that adds an element of failure to that, man.
Or
So, and
Environmentals. I mean, if you're going from if you're going from flat land at 2,000 feet
To 10.
and you're going up to 10,000 feet and it's
So
freaking 30 degrees,
different.
you gotta understand. This goes to what Joe's saying. You gotta understand that weapon. You gotta understand what the environmentals are gonna do to it.
yeah,
Shooting
That's why you
position.
shoot it
the
at
whole
camp.
nine.
thin air. Yep.
When you come to camp,
yeah,
shoot
it
your
affect
weapon.
our boat.
Go shoot it, man. Same thing with our bows. I mean,
Be
the
right.
first thing we do
Yeah,
in
Yeah,
camp is make sure
That's
we
one
shoot.
thing, on our
wow,
ranches, we make sure we
70%,
shoot
bro.
for that
It's
reason.
huge.
And stop, guys. I'm sorry. Stop zeroing at 200 yards.
Yeah, 0
Your
to 100.
rifle, be it mill or your standard
It's set up at
MOA,
100.
right? 0 at 100. Your
Exactly.
come ups are so much easier on
Yes.
a turret if you're zeroed at
100.
yards.
Everything works off of MOA and or inches. And I'm telling you, they all work off the 100-yard dot, right? You can leave it a half inch to an inch high, but I want it dead on at 100 yards, man.
If I have a gun zeroed, inch and a half, 2 inches at 100, I know that guy doesn't have to worry. He's dead on at 200 and he can be there without worrying about doing any changes or anything to the scope.
Sure.
I like as little as possible, as simple as possible. So that's just me. That's
Yeah, I mean, I'm a
Well,
rifle
but
hunter
the
from way
reason
back. I dial my gun in at 100 yards, and I use MOAs after that to adjust my turret, or I use my mil dots in my scope, and it works a million. I mean, I shoot milk jugs at 800 yards.
I mean, and honestly, Joe, I said it for the reason of know your weapon, because that's what you said, right? Get behind and know your weapon. Now, if a guy is shooting and he's 0 out at 200 yards and he go out there and he can do his math and he knows his dial ups, or he has his dope card for that 200 yard 0, then by all means. But
Guys got to do better.
And some of that is shooting position too, right? I mean,
True.
It
a
is.
lot of guys go to the range and they're shooting. And I see it. I took
Yeah,
the
off a
wife
sled.
to get her rifle zeroed,
Yeah.
and they're shooting off the bench, not necessarily a sled, but they're
Right.
shooting off the bench. They'll shoot 5 rounds at 100 yards, 1 or 2 at 200, and then walk away. Okay, well, what if I'm uphill, downhill angles? What if I got to sit down? I got to,
I
rest
sit
on
down
my
with my
pack.
phone. Yeah.
Yeah. Or you get out there and you don't have the security, we'll say,
Yep.
or stability
Mhm.
rather, of a bench, and you're out there with the monopod with a little V on top of it. Well, how's that gonna behave when that gun is wobbling everywhere, your respirations are up, and you ain't steady on that animal, and then you send in a pop shot downfield?
So I'm going to take it to elk hunting now. And what I'm seeing, especially now with rifle hunters and a lot of things, is that especially from late October on, a lot of people are expecting to find, they think they're going to find big bulls with large groups of cows. And I had talked about this earlier in the show today. And, that's very rare. Can it happen? Yes, it can happen. Absolutely. But it's very rare. Most of the time, those big bulls are now, especially, we're in November. Right now, we're getting ready to hit late November, getting into December. Those big guys are off. They're starting to bachelor up some now. So, if you're out there and you're trying to just find a big bull and you're just looking for a lot of cows to be able to do that, you're going to find a lot of cows and you're going to find maybe a small bull with them. Depending on the situation, some spikes and stuff like that. The bulls are now moving away from that. So the other thing that I'm finding, especially in these late season, is that a lot of hunters are prioritizing first light over midday. In other words, they feel like if they don't find elk at first light and in the morning when they're out there, that they're done for the day. And really, man, the best time, man, the leaves off these trees, and once these elk get bedded down, the glassing game of getting there and just really looking in these areas, man, on these southern slopes, the places they're trying to get warm. If it's warm, you're going to look in other areas that you're going to try to find them, in some of these aspen areas and some of these different hillsides. In fact, sometimes they'll bed in the areas that they feel secure just on the side, man. So I think that mid part of the day with glass, you're missing out on a huge opportunity to locate, because you find that those bedded bulls out there. Now you have an opportunity to move in, get in position, and make a great shot on that and have all day to do it. They're not moving, man. So I think the midday is a huge time for you to be able to find that. I think a lot of these guys are walking a lot. This is what I've seen. I've seen that a lot of rifle hunters are trying to hunt like archery hunters, and a lot of archery hunters are trying to hunt
like
rifle hunters,
hunter.
right? In other words, those rifle hunters are trying to get out there and get into that thick stuff and not use their glasses. And then you've got archery hunters that are trying to hunt the more open areas where it's more difficult to get an animal into you, man. It's great for seeing them, but it's not for killing them. So, and the other thing is, like, they'll hear a bugle and they'll hear it in this late rifle season, and they think that bugle means that there's a cow in heat, and it doesn't. You know what I mean?
They're just being elk.
Just talking.
They're just sounding off.
They're just sounding off. And, the more open, the better for the rifle hunters. The more thick, the better for the bow hunters.
Right.
So that's something that you want to remember. And that the other thing I think is, when they're glassing, here's the other part of it, is that they don't really know where to glass. And then a lot of times when they are glassing, it's looking they're done. It's not like they do it and understand that things can change from this minute to the next when you're glassing an area.
I'm 50 feet.
Yes.
Yeah,
You start
absolutely.
glassing here and you're not seeing something,
Yeah.
spend a little more time, move 50 to 100 feet, glass the same area, you're going to turn something up, right? I mean, it's that the perspective change to find an animal through glass is huge, huge, huge.
Yep.
So those are a few of mine right now, and talking about what I've been seeing with the rifle hunters. But, the other thing I see with them is that they get out there, and because they're not seeing a lot of bulls, they don't think that there's elk in the area, or they're not seeing a lot of elk. Well, they got to understand it's like feast or famine right now.
Yeah.
Because, when we're archery hunting, those bulls have split off, and you got a lot of different groups, small groups of cows. Bulls are all over the place. But now what's happened is these cows have come together, and they're in big groups now. The bulls are coming together, and either they're a single bull that's isolated and he doesn't want to be found, he's in a hole. So if you go look in the worst place that you think an elk that you don't want to go, that's probably where that elk is at, right?
Yeah.
And then the other them that are, bachelored up, you're going to find 5, 6, or 7 bulls together instead of them being all over the place, right? So
yeah, from various sizes, from rags to fives to you name it, and they're all together, maybe even a couple spikes, but I mean, they're all kind of hanging out back together again.
Yeah, those spikes will stay with the herd. They'll stay with mama and aunt. But you're right. Those other bulls will start bacheloring up like that.
Yep.
So you've heard me a little bit. Let me hear Guy and Gil on some of your.
Go ahead, Gil.
For me, if I wanted to take anything away from our hunt, whether it was in Canada or or in where we hunted in New Mexico this year, Joe, it was the ability to adapt to all the situations that we had coming around, right? When we got to Canada, we had no clue it was going to be really hot and tons of smoke, and wolves were going to be in our midst a bunch, right? We knew that wolves were there, but we just didn't know how many were going to be around us. It was being able to adapt to the situation, right? Which we're in a new place where we're hunting agriculture elk. We're not hunting mountain country elk, right? Although there's some big old hills there. We're not looking up at big snow-capped mountains in front of us, where we're in the Rocky Mountains or the Sangre de Cristos or wherever. I mean, it was being able to adapt. And I think people get really spun out when it's not happening the way they think it should happen, right? I think we got to lay in some of that and use the knowledge that we have. You guys as hunters, use the knowledge that you have, that you've been with the experience that you have, that level. I think that's what you need to tap into and just go hunting, man. Whether it's a different style or, not, I mean, we never night bugled. I've never night bugled really at midnight, 1 o'clock, because we never hunted past. I mean, we're hunting 10 o'clock at night, it's still daylight. I mean, it was the wildest thing we'd ever seen. But I think and look, we should have been 4 bulls, in that whole thing. And as I've talked to everybody across the states, it was tough on a lot of people. I mean,
so why was it tough? When you say it was tough, people were totally lost. Why?
People were totally lost. Why? Because the elk were not responding to the way they were hunting them. Okay. So if we're calling and we're doing those things and bulls are shut up and they're not responding in the early season, a lot of people are lost, right? They don't know where to go and find them, right? By just using the terrain and those types of things. We rely on calling, and when they're shut up, then it's more important for us to go put boots on the ground and keep rolling, right? We know that if we keep moving, eventually we're going to bump into something, right? I heard Waddell talking about it, this Waddy and his crew. They had a really tough hunt, man, in Montana and in wherever they were. I don't think they killed. I think Mutt killed 1 bull, and the rest of them over, right? I mean, so a lot of them really struggled, and that doesn't happen to that crew. They're usually in places that are hell for stout with animals, you know what I mean? And we are too. We're usually in places that got tons of animals. And when we first started, there were, right? But as elk would dictate, they are so adaptive to the pressures of hunting, scent, everything else. They change. And if you don't have the ability to change with them or understand, you have to use the tools available to you to change with them, then you're not going to be as successful.
So what's the answer to hunting silent elk then? I mean, if we're going to, if we're
covering ground.
if we're going to turn it back and we were to tell somebody that all they were doing was, and I see this all the time, they walk and bugle, walk and bugle, walk and bugle, right?
Yeah, well, I don't know why we're walking and bugling, right? At the end of the day, early season elk, we need to be walking and cow calling, maybe, right? Calf calling. I mean, we got to sound like, maybe even put your own little scenario together where you're going to call these silent bulls into you. They're not going to talk, but they're going to come in.
Right.
And a lot of times we're not patient enough, you know. I mean, look, Guy will tell you he called a giant bull into him, and the bull hadn't did anything but, while they were up there, the bull didn't make anything other than a sound, you know, at all. And then the bull's on top of him, you know. So these are things that we have to, as hunters, even with the people that we're guiding or ourselves, we have to learn how to adapt. And I think a lot of us get hung in that rut of not thinking out of the box and going and doing something a little different. Maybe it's getting further. Maybe it's hunting closer. I mean, it's all of those things that you got to, okay, this ain't working, right? We've been 3 days doing it this way or 4 days doing it this way. You saw that in Canada, right? We did it 4 or 5 days the way the Canadians wanted to do it, right? And no knock on them. They hunt the way they hunt because of the way that everything is. And no knock on them. They hunt the right way.
Yeah,
but
predators.
Yeah, but you got grizzly bears, wolves, you know, very low dense, not very dense populations of elk. We're hunting little pockets, big country with little pockets of elk. So we felt like with the Elk Bros, man, we just got to go cover more ground. And at the end of the day, we could, but look at the ground we ended up covering and how many opportunities we had, right? When maybe it was better to do the night bugling more and figure out where elk were and then go in there and try to attack them silently.
And so many people that I talk to, man, the first thing that I hear from everybody is that it was so hard because the elk were silent, right? Mm-hmm. And you shaking your head no? Did you not hear that?
No. I was shaking my head at that comment.
I think you mentioned it like 2 or 3 podcasts ago, Joe. The majority of the hunters mentioned the elk were quiet.
It drives me crazy. That's
and you know, in October when I was guiding, the elk weren't quiet. I mean, they sounded off every morning. They sounded off every night, just like regular. And that's another misconception. The guys are like, okay, mid-October, you probably don't need to be calling. Well, bull crap. I'm going to tell you straight up. If there wasn't a fence involved, Big O would be standing over the biggest elk I ever seen in my life. But there was a fence there, and I could.
Well, yeah.
I got the cows to me. I got them exactly where I needed them. But there was only one way to do that was to call, right? And if you can't call, you ain't even getting an opportunity at killing a bull.
And that's one of the things, like if I could go back and talk about miscues and misconceptions, the misconceptions are for a lot of people is that they're just going to get elk by bugling, right? They got to have other tools in the toolbox. We talk about that all the time. But we talk about scenarios, and people hear us talk about that. But one thing that I realize in talking to a lot of people and talking to our own dudes out there is that they just don't understand or have no understanding of a scenario, right? They don't really know what a scenario is. They kind of do, but they don't know how to put together the pieces on it. They don't know. And here's the big part of it. Even if I knew, like, okay, I need to do some cow calls and then I'm going to add some raking. And then, you know, if they got a recipe for it, right? Mm-hmm. If we could give them a recipe, they still don't know when to do it. They don't know where to do it. They don't know why to do it, right? Those are the parts that are missing for them because, you know, we're walking with dudes, man, and we're walking with them, right? And we're going through and we're kind of waiting like, well, man, you know, what do you think? You know, are you going to do a cow call or what do you want to do here? Is there, you know, we hear, smell, see something? Or they just want to stop and do a scenario. It's like, okay, we're on the edge of a park. Elk like a park. So we're going to sit here and we're going to do a scenario. Well, we might laugh about that, but that's thought process
I know.
for a lot of people out there.
Yeah.
So I think a big part of that is that, we need to really do a better job of teaching people about scenarios. I think that's huge. Not only, where, when, and why, but about the setup. And here was a big one. I get so many people that are doing the scenarios and they're having success, but a lot of times they're like, man, and this bull came in and I did not think it was going to happen. So they're not really doing it believing in it.
Yeah.
Or a lot of them even are like, well, I started doing a scenario and there was nothing going on. I didn't hear anything. And that's the main thing, is this auditory thing, right? I didn't hear anything. So I got up to leave and there was a bull looking at me, right?
Yeah, they weren't scanning their surroundings.
Well, and they weren't committed to it, man. They weren't committed to the time of the scenario that it takes. So,
so in your early season calling, when you do a scenario, you set up because there's a reason to do that, right? Not just because you're on the edge of a park or something.
Honestly,
like that.
edge of a park, I avoid at all.
Yeah, costs. No doubt.
Oh yeah,
that's a big stopping stand.
Right? I mean,
you're just going to get.
For me, it's like, look, if there's a park there, I'm 100 yards in the inside from that park. I don't even want to get to the edge.
Yeah.
And yet, where do everybody glass to be able to see elk, man? They want
to go to the park. Yeah.
Well, it's funny. So, I spent some time with Scott, Rich, and Richie, and I came back after a couple days, and Scott goes, man, we were in, I think he had a dozen animals or so in this real nice park, right? I mean, you couldn't ask for a more perfect storm, right? A saddle coming in, you got north-facing bedding, real thick timber, good feed, water, the whole nine. And he's showing me the video. They're at the literal edge of the park, and the elk are on the other side, exposed. Them elk turned, looked, and booked up the hill, never to be seen again. Yeah. Right? You're at the edge of the park. I was like, why did you do that?
Yeah, exactly.
Dropping that timber a little bit.
What they expect to see.
No, I avoid them at all costs, man.
Yeah, and so what I'm asking you is, in your setup, what's the most crucial? How long are you going to have that scenario play out? Typically, when you set up inside that 100-yard range,
it depends on the cues. It depends on whether or not it's a cold calling scenario, whether or not I've heard a bugle, whether or not I got cows around. Right, there's all these factors that go into it. Right.
Yeah, no, so my cue to you is no cow. You haven't heard anything. You haven't seen anything, but you've got some really good sign there. You're on a main trail that's just chock block full of track and fresh droppings and stuff like that, and blown up trees in the area. So you got an inkling that we could be leading to a bedding area, right? So you haven't heard anything, but if you put a scenario on of your raking and, making it sound like a bull's there with a hot cow, how long are you going to wait before you get up and walk out of that scene?
If I'm cold calling, I'll do about 35 to 45 minutes.
There you go.
And 35 to 45 minutes on my watch.
Yeah.
Right. And then generally I'll move out of that area as slow as I can possibly stand to move out of that area, right? Because it's their time, not my time. And I've learned that the hard way, where I would do a scenario and feel like I was there an hour, and it was 15 freaking minutes and I'm ready to move.
Yeah.
And then guess what? I get 50, 60 yards away, and what do I hear? Right where I was at. And it's like, oh my God, man, I just moved away and that bull walked right to where I was standing.
Yeah. So I want everybody to think on this, because we're gonna call this right here, and I still got a whole list of things that
I didn't even get to mine.
Yeah. Well, before we go, I want to hear. Let's get one of yours out on the flat here.
One.
Yeah, one of them. So if you were to say one of them was the juice to end with, which one would it be?
Gentlemen and ladies, stop hesitating to use the tools that you have. I don't care how small you think your repertoire is. If you do not use the tools in your toolbox, you will stumble across an animal or stumble across a notch tag at some point. You got to use the tools in your toolbox, irregardless of how much confidence you lack, because that's the
Simplify that.
only way.
Simplify that. Give an example. What are they
Okay,
not
if you have the best bugle in the world and you don't like your estrus buzz or your muse, use them anyway, because the worst case scenario is nothing comes in. But if you ain't using the tools, you're hiking and hoping, as JoJo says, right? And we're not out there to hike and hope. We're out there to create opportunity. So you got to use whatever tool is in that. If I'm going and I'm taking a nut off and I ain't got the right side, my 10 millimeter, because that's always the one that's missing out of the set. Right. The 10 millimeter ain't in there. What am I going to go do? I'm going to go grab a pair of needle nose. I'm going to go grab a pair of pliers. I'm going to go grab vice grips. If you're my wife and you don't know where the hammer is in my toolbox, she's going to go get the heaviest thing she could find and beat that nail into the wall so she can hang that picture of our granddaughter, right? Yeah. That is what it is. Use the tool you have. If you don't do that, you're hiking and hoping. So I'll leave it at that one, JoJo, since I only get one.
Yeah,
I think
that's a great one too, man, because and the tools aren't going to get better. I mean, you ask Cody, you ask Manano. You know, Manano's calling this year, right? You know, how much better just because you're doing it, Manano? How much better was it?
Man, I was able to get a response.
Yeah, and
I mean,
and that's a feather in the cap
for me, because I always hunt with either Beto, Joe, or Luis. So I was, always attached to one of them. So
he even was coaching for us this fall as well. I mean, I got to give it to him. The calling got so good, he was able to take Kevin and Josh out several days and be there to call for them and hunt with them as one of our winners of our ElkBros hunt. Yeah. I couldn't be prouder of any of our guys than what Manano's put together with, but it took a lot of practice. It took a lot of him kind of coming out of his shell of not being embarrassed around the guys, and he's paid his dues, and he's the guy's scary good as a hunter. I've said this a million times, one of the best finishers around, but now the guy has got an absolute ace in the hole, an assassin card to deal all the time because he speaks the language now, man. And I think if you were to ask any of our guys that were in elk camp with us this year, the most important thing that they felt like they lacked was the ability to call elk.
Absolutely. Right? And you take a look at the experiences you were having, Cody. What was that like, man, with the tool set you had?
Man, it was crazy.
You got to go home, man.
I mean, yeah. I mean, you put a big 7x at 16 yards in front of a guy. I mean, just unbelievable. I mean, you take where I came from a year ago to where I was at now. Wow. Unbelievable, lights out. And again, I will always say, I feel like I have an opportunity to kill something every single step that I take out of camp. So, and that's a credit to
one other real quick thing, man. And I saw this on several of our guys, man. And this is the last one I'll say is, when you get a response, go. Get the wind right and go. It's first day and man, I pipe off a location bugle and boom. I mean, we get a response 200 yards away. I'm like, okay, I know what I want to do. I'm waiting. Man, guys, go cut the distance, man, put eyes on that rascal and then get in there tight with him and go play ball. But if you do not engage, and I'm not talking about engage by talking back to him, I'm talking about engaging in the quest to go and getting eyes on that rascal, man. Go put your boots together and get and understand the wind direction, man. It's so important about when we're traveling that travel. Don't let the wind get up your tail and go right to him. You know, we did such a good job of that in Canada this year, man, with the guys that were with us. And it was so good using the wind and getting in and having some opportunities, some blown opportunities. But hey, we put ourselves in those positions because we knew what to go and do, man.
So
and we moved on.
I want what we just ended with right there on the response part. Because when we say something like that, it's kind of like the scenario thing. It's like, okay, I got to respond. Okay, so how am I going to respond? How far do I go? When do I not go? When do I sit here? You know, so we're going to give a couple of solutions for that and really talk about that just a little bit more. So I want you to hold on to that because we're going to actually start with that where we finished. And I know I have a list. I know Guy has a list. So all of us come back with something again that, again, when we take a look at the things that we saw in people, actual hunters on the ground this year that had issues with things and that response is a great one. You know, that's a fantastic one. I had one with my guy where he didn't want to move to get in position for a shot. So all of this stuff is actual things that people are going through that we want to pull up. You know, Manano, you have more than you think with that because your dad was there and you get to see those experiences of those types of things. You know, Chav sees it all the time and hears it from everybody that comes back in. And Cody, you got to live it for some days out there with people that were struggling with some things that have actually been doing this for a while. You were with guys that have it, you know. So again, there's those people that are, you know,
and they have a skill set too.
Yeah, that are experienced hunters with a skill set. So there were some things that you did that kind of blew their mind. And so why is that a surprise? Why are people not, you know, using some of that stuff? So there we are, man. We're gonna come back and do another part on this. Okay.
Always amazing, Joe. Guys, if you like what we're doing, please subscribe, rate, and review us. You got to go to Apple Podcast or iTunes to review us. And be sure to include your name and where you're from to get in our drawing for the Spin a Winner wheel. And you can check out more elk hunting content at ElkBros.com. Just a reminder, if any of our listeners would like their questions answered on the show, just send your question at info@elkbros.com. Again, want to tell you about we're going to be in Denver, Colorado. January, is it the 11th through the 14th?
11th through the 14th.
11th through the 14th.
At the Denver Convention Center.
Denver Convention Center. So can't wait to see you guys there. If people want to know if we're going to be taking bids on coming out hunting with the Elk Bros this year, absolutely. So y'all come and bug Joe and let him know that you want to get on the list to come hunting with us this year. I mean, I know guys are already hitting me about it. I've gotten probably 10 emails already from guys wanting to know what we're going to do. So Joe will have a better handle on that. We'll have a lot more answers at the show, and I can't wait to meet and greet a bunch of people and shake hands, blow a few new calls, and it'll be fantastic. Like we say down here in the Lone Star State, husbands, kiss your wives. Wives, kiss your husbands. Hug your babies. Keep your broadhead sharp and your powder dry. And we'll see you next week right here on Blue Collar Elk Hunting.
Peace.
Peace.
See ya.
See you later.
After hours with Guy Duplanche.
And for all you Tony Wintrip fans, here's some more of his new music. Last week we were talking about Don't Quit, and the song was Don't Quit on Me. Let's see what we're going to do here today. Here's Tony Wintrip.
To close the show out.
See you, everybody.
It's been one of those years. I want to put it all behind. I got a clip full of Remington core locks, and it's about closing time. I'm mounted up 4x12 on the top. I'm about to make that big buck drop. One more step, he's across the finish line. Yeah, drop the hammer time. I got some history with this mystery. Dude that's been around for a while. Been giving me fits the last 3 years. I'd love to see him in a pile. When his ears are up, he's out of luck. Gonna be in the hands of mine. When when it's drop the hammer time. Been many nights at the table, y'all, when I was eating crow. When I came home after darkness and everything was cold. And all those times I told her, she said, boy, you're never gonna be right when it's drop the hammer time. When I saw the latest forecast and the temps were getting cold, I figured that old boy was hungry and his sack was about to fold. And all those times that he sniffed the wind, his nose was better than mine. And now it's drop the hammer time. There's been many nights at the table, y'all, when I was eating crow, that I came home after darkness and everything was cold. And all those times I told her, she said, boy, you're never gonna be right until it's drop the hammer time. And I picked up the phone. It was dialed up a little bit early. Said, baby, I'm coming home. She said, there's daylight left and dinner's not ready. I said, everything's just fine. It was drop the hammer time. There's been many nights at the table, y'all, when I was eating crow, that I came home after darkness and everything was cold. And all those times I told her, she said, boy, you're never gonna be right. But it was drop the hammer time.